Okay, ship captains, session 8. This is the end of Right the Ship. This is taking everything that you've learned. Now, what do we do with it? How do we turn it into a business? How do we make some money from it? This isn't everyone's question. There's a lot of writing and writing online that we do just because we enjoy it, right? There's plenty of things that I've written on the internet that had absolutely zero intention or path forward to making money, but that was okay because it ended up leading to a lot of other opportunities, which is a big thing that we're going to talk about in this session. Is there are ways where you can monetize your writing directly, and there are ways where you can monetize your writing indirectly. And both are really important. I got this question all the time in 2015, 2016 when I was starting on Quora, and people would say, why are you writing so much on Quora? Do they pay you? And I said, no, I don't. I've made $0 off of writing on Quora directly, but I made hundreds of thousands of dollars, or technically through my company, millions of dollars, because of my experiences writing on Quora. I turned my ability, my knowledge for writing, my ability to write on the internet and on Quora into a business. And that's a big thing that doesn't really get talked about in the writing world. Is so much emphasis gets placed on monetizing the words themselves, but in reality, that's only one path. There's plenty of other paths where you can monetize tangentially from the words, right? Like the things that you write about lead to other opportunities that end up paying you a lot more. I know a lot of people who they don't make any money off of their writing, the things that they write online, or even their books, but they make a ton of money speaking, right? And so books and writing become the magnet for those opportunities. But that doesn't mean that they need to go and try and monetize the words themselves. The words represent them, right? Talking about scaling yourself. The words represent them, and then they take that knowledge and they monetize it elsewhere. So if you walked into Write the Ship thinking, look, I just want to become a better writer, we definitely drilled into all of those elements. Everything from category creation on the voice side, right? Coming up with a unique and differentiated voice, differentiated and unique formats, both conceptual and literal. And then also, how are you saying something fundamentally different? So the differences in the content itself. That is really the crux of the art of writing. And then all the other things that come with it are then extensions of the decisions you make there, right? Creating your content roadmap, learning through data what's working and what's not, doubling down on the things that are working, naming and claiming your territory, taking that knowledge, repositioning yourself, adjusting your bio, going through and doing all of those things is what ultimately shapes the whole art of writing. It's the art of all of the things that you create and your library as a whole. The business side is a completely different side of the game. My goal in this session is to give you the lay of the land and help you think about it. This is also likely going to be an area where we can explore that whole rabbit hole separately. It's not really the clear focus of Write the Ship. This is sort of a beast in and of itself, but there's enough that we can cover here where you understand, okay, I've spent all of this time working on my writing. Now, what are some things that I can do with it? And also, how should I be thinking about it? So that's really my goal here in this session. So as we dive in, right, this is the first big question. Can you make money as a writer? The answer is, without question, yes. The problem, though, is that we don't talk about it nearly as much as we talk about the art of writing, and this was always my issue when, I studied creative writing in college, specifically fiction writing. And while I really appreciated the community and I loved being surrounded by other creative, artistic people, I struggled to connect with a lot of them, including my teachers, because no one really wanted to talk about the business side. And anytime I asked questions about the business side, I was sort of met with this hesitation of, well, that's all you care about, then you're not a real writer. You're in it for the wrong reasons. And meanwhile, I'm about to graduate from college, right? And I'm like, I live in downtown Chicago. This is an expensive city. I got to figure out how I'm going to pay my rent and take care of myself while doing the thing that I loved. And basically, I remember my last class of college, one of my professors was explaining to us how we go about the book publishing process. And that was essentially the only path in front of us. It was very binary. You're either a successful writer or you're not. You're either an author with a major publishing house or you're not. And period, end of story. And he explained, okay, so the process then of getting your book out into the world or becoming a quote unquote successful writer, none of it was rooted in, I didn't have any idea what that actually meant economically. How much money does a successful writer make and how do they get that money? And none of that was explained. Instead, all that was really explained was you're going to spend probably a couple years on a manuscript, not practicing in public, right? You're going to hide away in your apartment. You're going to slave away on it, just like all the real authentic old world writers do. And then you're going to put that manuscript in a manila envelope. And you're going to use this thing called the post office, all right? And you're going to go to the post office and you're going to put the manila envelope into the little thing that transports physical objects around the world, right? And then they're going to take that manila envelope and they're going to deliver it to one of the publishing houses that you think is a good fit for your book. And then you're going to wait. And you're going to sit at home and you're going to wait and you're going to wait and you're going to wait for that letter back, letting you know whether or not you are a successful writer. And 99% of the time, you are going to hear back a rejection letter. Good luck. And that was quite literally my send-off from studying creative writing in college and then entering the real world and going, how in the world am I going to turn my passion for writing into a career? And so everything that I'm going to share with you, these are all things that I had to learn the hard way, right? I entered the real world. I was making minimum wage as a copywriter at an ad agency downtown Chicago. And I had to learn, just by making mistakes and trying lots of different things, how does a writer actually make money? And then I learned even more than that, right? Not just as a writer, but then how do you take your writing and what else can that lead to? Which was so far outside of the realm of what got explained to me in college. You can take that and turn it into a business. You can take that and consult. You can take that and advise companies on their own messaging. There's all of these things that you can do that no one really explains to you are still part of the realm of writing. So that's what we're going to talk about. And all of these, I've done everything from write free and $5 and $10 blog posts in my early 20s, all the way to, I've built and scaled a multi-million-dollar ghostwriting business. And the only reason I share that, right, is because I want to explain, here's how it works, and this is what you can learn from it, and here are the lessons that I learned so that you can make decisions accordingly. So these are the big 6 career paths that took me a long time to even put on my radar and learn existed. I have played each one of these. Even today, I still do a mix of almost all of these, and each one has very different benefits. Now, again, when I was in school, and this is very true in the real world, everyone's perception of what a successful writer is basically, are you an author with a major publishing house or not? And what's fascinating to me is nobody asked the question, well, what's your publishing contract like? How much of your book did you have to give up? How many copies have you sold, right? It's like the most binary definition of almost any industry. Did you get the badge of approval or no? And I in many ways, I understand it because I grew up believing the same narrative. I told myself, I'm either J.K. Rowling or I'm nobody. I'm either Hemingway or I'm nobody. And I just learned that that is so fundamentally flawed. So that is one career path. But what I ended up discovering, and as I've spent more time talking with more and more writers, I've never published a book with a conventional publishing house, but I know many people in my network who have. And interestingly, I think all of them unanimously have told me It was cool. I did it for the credibility. I don't think I'll ever do it again. And then they list off all the pain points. They're a hassle to work with. I have very limited creative control. Publishing date kept getting pushed back. I felt like my editor was really spread thin. All of the things that you hear about, they're all true. And the only reason that people really say yes to it is because we've all collectively believed in this fable, that, hey, you're only a successful writer if you're with a conventional publishing house. The thing about being an author, and when you define yourself in such a binary way, when you define your success in such a binary way, what you don't realize is that authors live and die by book royalties. And the number of books that remain bestsellers over a long period of time is extraordinarily small. And as much as anyone would love to believe that the thing that we write is going to end up there, to me, it's worth just injecting a dose of reality into the situation so that you can make long-term decisions, right? And if your career path is based on you hitting a grand slam, to me, that's not a strategic decision. That's you playing the lottery. And it's very difficult to make decisions off of that. So instead, it's worth really questioning, okay, this is almost more of a holistic financial conversation than anything else, right? Income is very subjective. If we're talking about the business of writing, you have to root that in the context of your own life. And so, for example, I have a really good friend here in Los Angeles who's an incredibly talented and incredibly successful sales copywriter. And one of the things that I'll walk through is, how that works, how sales copywriters make money. And also, he was smart enough, he was making a ton of money as a sales copywriter early in his career. And then he realized, hey, I can use my skill set to sell products that I own. So I'm going to build my own company. I'm going to be my own founder and entrepreneur, and I'm going to use my sales copywriting skill set in order to sell the thing that I own more of. So now I'm reaping 10 times more of the benefit. Incredibly, incredibly successful. He has a ton to share. His network is incredible. He could get a 6 or 7 figure book deal, no problem. But in the context of what he earns from his company, even with that book deal, even a 7-figure book deal to him is like, that doesn't really move the needle, right? Because his company is doing hundreds of millions of dollars. And so he's like, I don't think that I really want to do this. Or even more so, right? Forget the book deal. Oh, in order for this book to really make a dent in my income, I got to be selling like hundreds of thousands of copies, millions of copies, because the royalty on it is going to be so small. Like, I'm barely even going to feel that. Okay. So that's an extreme example on one side. You go to the other side of the spectrum, and if you're an author or a writer and you think about, I'm going to live off my royalties. Well, let's say your living expenses are $100,000 a year, $60,000 a year, $200,000 a year, whatever it is, right? Think about how many books need to be sold in order for you to sustain your lifestyle 100% on being an author. It is incredibly difficult. It is incredibly rare. So much so that when you look at even other really successful writers, few that come to mind even this year, or in the past few years, Mark Manson, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, we've talked about. James Clear, Atomic Habits, we've talked about, right? Jen Sincero, You Are a Badass, we've talked about. All of these authors, even though they wrote books that topped the New York Times bestselling list and sold millions of copies, they also do some of these other things. They have their own courses, they have their own products, their own services. Ryan Holiday, who wrote The Obstacle is the Way, go to his website. He's got communities you can join. You can buy like physical Stoic statues of Marcus Aurelius. You can buy a little Stoicism coin, right? Like even someone like him who's had best-selling books is going, look, living off book royalties is really hard. So why am I explaining all this? I'm explaining all of this to give really important context to the fact that this pipe dream of defining success as a writer by being an author, and not just an author, but a best-selling author, is really flawed. And the reason it's flawed, not just on the surface from a perception standpoint, like you can be a successful writer in a dozen different ways. It's flawed because even if you achieve the goal you think that you want to achieve, right? Even if you're selling 2 million books a year, okay? You're still, if you're just living off your royalties, and especially if you're signed with a publishing house that's going to take 90% ownership, right? So that means for every book sold at $10, you're taking home $1. And then you inject some taxes into that and you're maybe taking home 60 cents, you know? That's a really difficult way to live. And what you end up learning is that there's actually more effective revenue streams to sustain yourself. And so what I've learned and how I've completely shifted my whole mindset on this is that even if you reach the pinnacle of success as an author, you still are disproportionately incentivized to make money elsewhere, because then that takes some of the pressure off your writing. That would suck if you were like, man, in order to sustain my living, the next book that I write has to sell 1 million copies or I'm going to go bankrupt. What a terrible way to live, right? So I encourage you to kind of get out of, if you are in this place, right? Get out of this binary mindset of success, and let's talk about some of these other areas. So what are these other areas? Well, ghostwriting, sales copywriting, technical writing, being an entrepreneur and using your writing to build your business, and then taking your knowledge of writing and loaning it out to other people. So just to do a little synopsis on each one, okay? Ghostwriting, and what's interesting about all of these is you don't necessarily need to be the best writer on earth or even have writing be your primary skill set. You can have a different skill set, right? You could be a psychologist, you could be a business consultant, you could be an M&A analyst, you could, be a growth hacker. But with the ability to write, you can pair your skill set with writing and all of a sudden start monetizing in a lot of different ways. So ghostwriting, all that really means is you have some sort of innate skill set and ability to write within a certain area. Okay, very few people actually do what I do, which is I write across a lot of different industries. And the only reason that I do that is because I ended up having the demand for it through my business, and I had to trial by fire learn. If I could go back, or advice that I would give someone else, I would really encourage you to explore one industry, one niche, one category, master it, drill into it, understand everything you can about it, and be the ghostwriter for that one thing, because you're going to then have a depth of knowledge that is very, very easy for you to efficiently monetize over and over again. For me, every time that I've gotten good at creating these frameworks for myself, but every time I write in a different vertical, I kind of have to relearn everything. I have to go learn that whole industry, and I can do it quickly now, but there's still an efficiency lost. If you're in an industry that you really, really understand, it becomes a lot easier. And just as a quick side story here, I recently, I've done some work in entertainment, and I've written for some artists, not songs, I wish, maybe one day, articles for artists and things like that. And recently I did one with a major record label, and I was writing for one of their executives. And I would kind of walk into it thinking, oh, this is going to be the same. It's an executive is an executive, right? And immediately I realized I was going to need to spend 3 or 4 times more time on this, because I am a lot less familiar with the music world from a business standpoint than I am the business world or the startup world, which is where I primarily write for executives and founders. And I could do it, right? But I realized that I needed to spend significantly more time in order to do it. So that efficiency loss is kind of something that you always want to be optimizing for. Ghostwriting, all it means, right, is that you are going to help someone else clarify their thoughts, say what they want to say, format it, right? Lean into their voice. It's all the things that we talk about. And once you're able to do it for yourself, if you can successfully do it for yourself consciously, there's a very high likelihood that you can do it for other people. It takes some practice. It takes practice leaning into different voices, but if you understand the principles for yourself, that's what someone's basically buying. They're not really buying someone else to just put pen to paper. They're buying the fact that you know how to do it for yourself and that they would like that same skill set for them. And then they put their name on it. The question people always ask me is like, how are you okay monetizing your writing that way? The answer is, I don't think about it as my writing. I think about it as my knowledge. I think about it as my skill set, but I don't sit down, write something that I really care about, and then go shop it to people, right? Then that would feel weird. I'd be like, I wrote this. This is my own thought, my own insight, my own idea, and now I'm selling it to someone else. Then I would have a problem with it. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is someone else is coming to me and saying, this is my idea. This is what I would like to say. Can you help me say it? And then I'm like, yeah, sure. You can use my pen. You can use my skill set to help you say the thing that you want to say. So from the very beginning, I don't even think of it as my own writing. And ghostwriting is really fun. I have a blast with it. I get to meet so many interesting people. It's more lucrative, right? It's a lot more lucrative than if you say I'm a content writer, because content writers are more easily replaceable, and ghostwriter kind of implies a unique and differentiated skill set. I think it's one of the most undervalued and underappreciated forms of monetizing your skill set of writing, right? It's not the same as monetizing your writing. You're monetizing your skill set. And notice with ghostwriting, you can do this in all different forms, right? There's ghostwriters for articles, which I tend to specialize in. There's ghostwriter for books. There's ghostwriters for speeches, right? So you can pick basically anything or anywhere you hear words, someone is going to want help clarifying those words. Great. Go be that person. Sales copywriting. Sales copywriting is really interesting. This was a whole aspect of the writing world that I had no exposure to up until a few years ago. Like I said, I made friends with this guy here in LA, and who's been an incredible mentor to me and is a very, very successful sales copywriter. And what I learned from him is the sales copywriting world is basically all rooted in one thing. Can you write things that convince people to buy? Full stop. If you can, you have infinite opportunity. I think of how many businesses and how many people on planet Earth want help with that. Now, where people get confused is they think sales copywriting or copywriting is the same thing as like content marketing or technical writing. It's not. It's really, really not. Sales copywriting is a completely different art. And it's the difference between going to a company's blog or their site and them saying, hey, here's our thoughts on the industry, or here's how to use this piece of software. That's more content marketing, technical writing sort of stuff. It's more educational. Sales copywriting is having a sniper rifle, being able to pinpoint, hey, customer, or hey, potential customer, I know exactly what you're going through. I know exactly what you're feeling. I know exactly what's frustrating you. I know exactly what the point of friction is, and I know exactly what you need in order to solve it. The ability to use language in that way and to move a customer or a potential customer from I'm hesitant to, okay, you've convinced me this solution is really going to change my life. If you can do that, your ability to monetize is through the roof. And again, of course, like no one's going to tell me that in the fiction writing department in college, but this became another really interesting vehicle where I thought, wow, yeah, through one lens, it's sales copywriting in general. Are you just a good copywriter? Do you understand the best practices of selling through writing? But B, if you have unique industry knowledge, right? Again, you might not be a writer first and foremost. You might be a psychologist, might be a therapist, you might be a business consultant, you might be whatever it is. You can take the skill of writing and sales copywriting and go to other people in your field and go, man, your site could be so much better. Your emails could be so much better. Your materials could be so much better. I can help you. I can help you convert more customers. That's great. You can monetize that. The other way that you can monetize with sales copywriting, which we'll get into just in a little bit, is doing what's called a revenue share. So in the case that when I got introduced to this a couple of years ago, my friend said, hey, if you want to get into this, I'll give you some products. I'll give you some prompts. You write the sales letter, the sales letter being either in text form, you send it as an email to the customer, like, an email newsletter. And it's very clearly written with a deliberate goal of, can you convert that customer at the end of the email so we can track how many people convert? Or what you're literally doing is you're actually writing the script that's going to become a video sales letter. And that's what a lot of these sales copywriters do. If you see a Facebook ad or you see some sort of video ad where the person's just like, you find yourself watching it and you're like, wow, how is this so convincing? Someone got paid to write the script to that thing that you're listening to. No matter how unscripted you think it is, someone got paid in order to come up with the language that person's using that's making you lean in and go, whoa, this actually might be the solution that I was looking for. Interesting. And what happens when you're a sales copywriter is that you can get paid on a percentage of how many people convert. So when you do this for a big company, this can be really, really lucrative, right? They'll say, hey, we'll pay you $10,000 base, whatever it is, and that number fluctuates based on your own experience, based on the company, based on, a lot of different things. But we'll pay you $10,000 to write a sales letter. And then we'll pay you $1 for every customer that converts because we're selling a $10 product or we're selling a $20 product, and we'll give you $1 royalty up to a certain amount. And so in this scenario, my friend said, how it typically works is, my best copywriters, I'll pay them a flat rate, and then I'll pay them, some sort of royalty up to $1 million. Okay, so all of a sudden now you spend a lot of time writing one thing, and if that works, right, if that converts, all of a sudden you're making money up to that $1 million or whatever that threshold is. And I find that 99% of the writing world has no idea that this whole industry even exists, but it does, and it's very, very lucrative. And the people that are good at it monetize it for days, years, eras. It's astounding how much money you can make with sales copywriting. Technical writing is where more writers start. Technical writing is, I want to pay you to write a blog post for our company. I want to pay you to write this news article. I want to pay you to write my email blast. It's more, if you're just a technically proficient writer, you have those writing gigs just over and over again, right? Because people need random stuff written all the time. Oh, you can write a pitch deck for me. Cool. Oh, you can write a one-pager for me. Cool. You can write a ebook for me. Cool. The list goes on and on. So technical writing is more of the basic and usually more introductory stuff. I did tons of technical writing when I was first starting out. I wrote everything. And it usually is where writers get paid like per hour. And we'll talk about how you can kind of make more money on the technical writing side here. Obviously, then the next is being an entrepreneur. So anytime you can use your writing to build your own business, that's where you're going to capture the majority of the economics. Okay. Because in a lot of these other areas, you're getting a sliver. And sometimes in the case of sales copywriting, or sometimes you can negotiate this with ghostwriting too. If you get to a certain level, the high-end ghostwriters charge same thing, a base fee plus some sort of royalty on the project. But this only works if you yourself have achieved a certain level of success, right? Like a lot of the ghostwriters are also really successful, or even New York Times bestselling writers in and of themselves. So that's kind of why they can command what they command. And the royalty that you can get on it, it only is meaningful if the person you're ghostwriting for, or if the company you're copywriting for is so big and willing to put money behind it that the sliver that you get is meaningful. Right? I've done deals like this with people who are a lot smaller, right? And what ends up happening is you end up taking on a lot of the risk, because you go, oh, okay, I'll take my 10% or I'll take my 1%, but they're not big enough yet, or they're not putting enough money behind what they're doing, that then you end up looking at the royalty that you get and you're like, man, I could have literally just done one project and I would have made more than all of the royalties that I got on that. So this is where learning about the business side is really important, and making decisions accordingly. So as an entrepreneur, what this means is, can you take your writing to build some sort of business? Can you use your articles to get more clients? Can you write a book that's going to land you speaking gigs? Whatever it is. Can you take your writing and instead of like I see people doing this in SEO all the time, is they go, instead of me as a writer going out and selling my services to another company to monetize my content, I'm going to start my own niche site in whatever category I see potential, and I'm going to write the content on that site, and I own the site, and then I'm going to turn that site into a directory or kind of a product in itself, and then I'm going to monetize the site, and I own it, right? So instead of you getting paid per hour or per blog post or whatever it is for someone else to monetize your content, you're taking on the risk yourself. No one's paying you to write it, but what you're building, you own. So that we're going to talk through kind of where it makes sense to start some of these things, because I don't think every one of these is the best first step when you start monetizing. So this I consider to be a little bit later stage, because you have to take on more of the risk yourself, right? You're basically starting a business. You're being an entrepreneur. And then this last one, being a messaging expert. Man, again, no one explained this to me. If you understand language, if you understand how to achieve clarity of thought, if you understand persuasion, you can loan that skill set out to so many different types of people. PR firms, communications departments, executives at companies, right? I mean, events companies, and everything on earth requires words, requires messaging, requires people to understand what they're doing. And every time a new industry comes out, like I'm seeing this a lot with cryptocurrencies and blockchain right now, every time a new industry comes out, that means there's a monumental opportunity for you to step into that industry, spend some time learning it, learn the vernacular, learn the language, and then go, I help companies in this space clarify what they're trying to say. In 2017, I was bombarded by opportunity during the whole crypto run up a few years ago. And literally all that happened was I was ghostwriting for a guy who was the same guy who got me interested in Bitcoin and Ethereum in 2016. I was ghostwriting for this guy, and I was learning a ton about crypto and blockchain. I was fascinated by it. And all of a sudden, all I did was I just started writing about what I was learning. And I was just writing Quora answers and writing articles basically saying, hey, this is a fascinating new industry. And I went to this dinner here in LA, and one of the guys that I had known through this other guy that I was ghostwriting for, a small network, we were all kind of friends. And I went to this dinner, it was maybe like 20 people there, and it was a crypto dinner. And I was really interested in it, and somehow I found myself at this dinner. And the way that I got introduced, my friend referred to me as, oh yeah, he's a blockchain writer, and he's incredible with helping blockchain and crypto companies come up with their messaging. After that meeting alone, or that dinner alone, I had more ghostwriting business than I knew what to do with for like 8 months, because every person there had the same problem. And the problem was, we have this brand new technology and we don't know how to explain it to the world. Oh, you're an expert? And I was not an expert. I had written a handful of articles on the subject, but I was technically a good writer, right? It's technical writing, but just applied to a different industry. And I was like, okay, I understand what this means. I can take the complicated thing you're giving me and I can just make it easy to understand. And all of a sudden, these companies, not only was I helping write things, but these companies were giving me shares in the company. Granted, none of them panned out and they all flamed out because it was the dot-com boom of crypto in 2017. But they were giving me shares in the company because they wanted help clarifying their messaging. I was becoming a messaging consultant. And so that's a risk reward you can take on, right? I said, I don't want cash, I want equity. Because the cash, at that time, I was like, I don't really need that right now. And I'd rather take a little bit of equity. And if I lose it, if the company goes to zero, that's fine. But if it blows up, that's going to be a big, big outcome. And so I was okay with that risk reward. And this is this thing that, again, none of this gets explained to writers, is that when you master language, everybody wants your skill set. Everybody. And you can monetize it a dozen different ways, or here, these are the 6 big ways that you monetize. So I really hope, I know that that's a lot and it's kind of a lot to take in at once, but I hope that this helps give you a lay of the land over what it looks like to monetize your writing and all these different ways that you can define success. And that if there's nothing else, I hope that that kind of reassures you too and go, wow, I can be a successful writer, and I'm not going to be the next J.K. Rowling or the next Hemingway. And you know what? That's totally okay. I'm going to have a legendary career, and I'm going to define success differently. So I hope that the takeaway here is that it's empowering and it's highly profitable, and it is the opposite of the narrative we're told, which is it's binary and 99% of writers end up poor. It's just wrong.